It appears President Trump's re-election may not be as certain as many Republicans would like you to think. According to Navigator Research, many Americans are conflicted, and they may disapprove of the president while still crediting him with a strong economy. Those folks have been dubbed moral market watchers and were key in the 2018 midterms.
Those voters will also be a major factor in 2020. Now, according to new reporting in The Hill, while there are high approval ratings for Trump's handling of the economy, Gallup pollsters found that only 13% of Americans say that economic issues are a top priority. Now, joining us for a deep dive on the issues President Trump can face is The Hill's political correspondent, Reid Wilson. Reid, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey.
So, Reid, tell us, you wrote a very insightful piece here, which is basically about people benefiting from the economy, who approve of the economy, but are turned off by the president and his tactics. Do you think that that's enough to cost him the election?
So this is a small segment of the electorate. Yeah. It's about 6 to 10% who approve of the job that President Trump is doing on the economy, but don't approve of him personally. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, this is the reverse of what we saw in 2012 when President Obama's approval rating was higher than his economic job approval rating. There are another couple of differences in there, but that little segment there, and dubbed the moral market. Okay, that's what that was the clever phrase that I came up with.
I like it. I like it.
We'll see if it sticks.
But
these are people who are they overwhelmingly say that the economy is doing excellent or very well. About 81% of them say that the economy is in one of those two top tiers. But they just don't like the tweets. They don't like the president's combative attitude, and they don't like him personally, if you will. And that segment in 2016, they broke down. About 39% voted for Hillary Clinton, about 32% voted for President Trump, and almost 30% voted for a different candidate.
Wow.
Gary Johnson, a Jill Stein, somebody like that. This time around, 6% doesn't sound like a lot, but in the 2018 midterms, they voted for Democrats by a 59 to 39% margin in races for Congress around the country. That tells me that there's a huge swing that has taken place among those people who are, they were cautious about Trump. They weren't necessarily completely never Trumpers in the beginning. Now it's starting to look like they might be.
That's
given the tightness of the election in 2016 in states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, these are the people who have a good chance of defining what happens in 2020. Yeah. They're overwhelmingly men. They are younger. They're very affluent, and they live in the suburbs. So this is different. I had a Republican consultant say to me, the gender gap is only a math problem. Yeah. If we can just turn out more men, then that makes up for this. But this suggests that there are some of those suburban men who are used to voting for Republicans.
Yeah.
Would be totally fine voting for President Mitt Romney.
Yes.
They have a lot more problems voting for President Trump.
It's interesting that you say that their opposition is sort of hardening against Trump because he is such a litmus test, right? It's hard to have sort of ambiguous feelings about either you're really with him or you're really against him.
Yeah, that's one thing we see in the surveys. A typical poll will ask, do you approve or disapprove of the president? All right, you approve. Do you approve a lot or a little bit? Somewhat approve, very approve, somewhat disapprove, very disapprove. His very numbers on both sides are miles higher than they are for pretty much every other politician in modern history. His strong disapprove is much higher than his strong approval rating, which is a sign, somebody who somewhat disapproves, they might be convinced to vote for you eventually. Somebody who's in the strong disapprove camp, they're never moving.
Well, that's the real
That tells me that President Trump has a really hard ceiling. He's not going to get more than 48, 49%. Now, that's enough to win in an electoral college, but that's a ceiling, and he's got to deal with it.
I've seen Nate Silver, and others say that he could even lose the popular vote by 5 million votes.
I think that was Nate Cohn, actually.
Or Nate Cohn, right.
One of the Nates.
One of the statistical Nates.
Super smart
losing by 5 million and still being able to take the electoral college is very interesting. So that really does come down to pure demographics and the type that make up the states in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and others. What is the actual swing voter in those states look like? Because it will come down to 100,000 people, maybe 200,000.
I don't think so.
Really.
I think we're going to see I think the turnout, first of all, is going to be monstrous. We're going to see more turnout than we have for 100 years, and possibly more.
On both sides, right?
Sure. The turnout's going to be through the roof. The Democratic turnout, however, is going to be so incredibly strong that what cost Hillary Clinton those three states was voters staying home in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia. Florida. That's not going to happen this time. Now, Trump has to go find more voters who can make up for that, but that's going to be tough. So bottom line, I don't think this thing gets decided by 100,000 votes. I think it's going to be a pretty significant margin. Democrats have two main paths back to the 270 votes that they need. One is that northern path, the Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, that we talked about so much that most people missed in the 2016 election. The second path is a southern path, what I'm calling the Sun Belt path. That goes through states like Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, even Texas. And let me tell you, if people think that Texas, that you've heard Democrats are going to come back in Texas for years and years.
Yeah.
This time it's real, and let me tell you why. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who move to Texas every year. They come from California, they come from New York, they come from predominantly from blue states.
Yes.
And when they come to Texas, the Republicans down there love to say, look at all these people coming in for jobs, for low taxes, everything like that. What they'll tell you quietly behind closed doors when their recorder's off is that, they come in from California and then they vote like they're still living in California.
They vote
We
for
saw
Democrats.
this in Nevada. We saw this in Colorado. We saw this in New Mexico. All states that George W. Bush won in 2004. Republicans haven't won those states since because of those migrants from blue states. Let me tell you, it's starting to happen in Texas. It's not going to be the sleeping Hispanic giant that suddenly wakes up and turns out to vote. It's going to be those white voters who come in for tech jobs. The
You're
younger millennials.
In Houston and in Austin and in Dallas. I'm from Texas.
The growth
so totally
is happening especially in those Austin, San Antonio areas so fast that I've talked to city managers who literally can't build sewers fast enough.
Texas is the big Democratic dream, of course, because once you have California, New York, and Texas, the Electoral College becomes very tough. Give us a preview, though, of what you're working on next.
So taking a look at the race to be the next AOC. Every young Democratic challenger running against an incumbent, and there are quite a few of them this year, are trying to sort of capture that lightning in a bottle. The Justice Democrats, some other groups on the left are trying to become anointing the candidates around the country who might take over for these older Democrats who've been there for a long time. And let me tell you, it's not just the sort of quiet members like a Mike Capuano who lost to Ayanna Pressley who might face trouble. I mean, we're talking about Elliot Engel, who chairs the Foreign Affairs Committee. We're talking about Jerry Nadler, who chairs the Judiciary Committee. These are senior Democrats who are going to face real challenges coming up next year from these sort of younger new generation.
How much does the Justice Democrats or AOC endorsement matter in those races, in those primaries?
I'm not entirely clear that the endorsement matters. It's what kind of work comes behind that. Interestingly enough, we haven't seen AOC turn her popularity, her Twitter following, all of that stuff, into a real fundraising juggernaut. She is not the top-raising Democrat in the House. She's not even the top-raising freshman in the House by any stretch of the imagination. We're seeing people like Katie Porter out in California, who's not exactly, Miss Flamboyant, raising $1 million in a quarter.
She's pretty. She's
good.
She's going to be the rock star of this freshman class over the long run, over the 10 or 20 years.
She went on Bill Maher and was pretty incredible.
She
beat up Ben Carson.
Yeah, interesting. Reid, thanks. Great to see you.
Really appreciate it. Next on Rising, the American Federation of Teachers is filing a lawsuit against the Department of Education. Student loan forgiveness is at the heart of the suit. That organization's president is going to tell us why she believes actions by the department are, quote, a betrayal and a travesty.
And the president of the Republican Main Street Partnership is going to explain how her group is trying to increase female political leadership. Stay tuned for all of that on Rising.